Happy holidays, guys. It's award time and a lot of stuff came out like always this year, so I'm going to do my best to summarize some of the best IEMs I've heard so far. Starting with the best exciting, engaging, or the most fun IEM, my pick would be the Empire Years Raven. Now this thing comes in at 3,600 USD, which is a lot, but it is a quad brid and the sound quality is no doubt endgame levels or quality. From the clarity and the resolution all the way to the low end bass texture and impact, the Raven goes pretty hard. It's one of the sets that I wish I could have made a video on while I was on break. Maybe I'll ask my friend again, but it is very good. If you want a fun and lively signature, the Raven's gonna get you out of your seat and just like start head bobbing. However, I do realize it's a very expensive IEM, so a more attainable alternative would be the Kiwi Years Melody. It's a very exciting, similar sound, but the low end isn't as textured and physical, not as weighted, as well as just the overall technical performance is obviously a few steps behind and not as smooth as the Raven. It gets a little sharp, but the Melody, is only $89 instead of 3,600, so a very good value pick. Moving on, the best bass head IEM would be the Fat Freak Grand Maestro. If you love a lot of bass, like we're talking at least a 15 dB bass shelf boost, then these are it. In terms of control, physicality, reverb in the air, and the bass texture, you will feel the thundering low end just like rumbling in your ears and your chest. Very deep and textured. It doesn't get much better than this bass wise, but for you folks that that want even more bass than this, you can look for the Scarlett Minis, which it's not as well controlled and refined in the bass and the overall sound, but hey, if you want the most bass, that does have the most bass. But don't worry, if you're not about dropping over $600 to $3,000, which is very understandable, smart even one can say, and you only want to get that bass fix in and don't necessarily care about refinement, resolution, detail, and all that, then just grab the KBE Rosfinch, $20 and shit ton of mid bass. Have a fun time. Now on the opposite end of the spectrum, for the best neutral IEM, or the best balanced sounding, this IEM is actually from a fairly new and underrated company, and that would be the Araverdi OH700 VB. Basically, the 700 VB is a cleaner supernova with better sub bass extension and low end texture because it has a dynamic driver and not BA. It's not as refined and airy as the supernova. The supernova is still smoother, but it can be a little bit too smooth sometimes in the vocals as well as the low end, and it's just a little bit warmer, plus it's also impossible to get, whereas the 700 VB strikes a better balance of airy vocals, and you can actually get these. The layering is also slightly better on the 700 VB because it's cleaner, and the stage size also feels bigger because of the slight scoop, and yes, there is a scoop in the mid bass region. Now this will affect hip hop and EDM tracks, so tracks with a lot of mid bass, but with the bass switch on, so more mid bass, it's surprisingly fine, most likely because of the flatter tuning, so every frequency is portrayed more evenly and there's not that big of a noticeable contrast in the mid bass. Rock and male vocals are surprisingly fine. You're not going to get the most energy or the most thickness and the most slam out of the bass guitars, but it's not thin like the variations either. And it's only $800 for an endgame IEM, which is actually really good. And honestly, I wouldn't spend more than that for a neutral IEM because it's not very special, right? If you're paying 1,000 plus, you should get something that's more unique in its sound, unless it's the Subatomic Storm, but that's $6,000 and a completely different beast. I mean, if you got the spare cash and can somehow get your hands on one, then yeah, the Storm is most likely going to be better than the OH700 VB. You can also go for the Let's Sure S15, which in my opinion is the best neutral planar you can get. It's better than the MP145. You can also go for the Sophier's Studio 4. It's also a very well balanced IEM. But Storm aside, the best or the most technical IEM I've heard this year would be the Let's Sure Cadenza 12, with the runner-up being the Symphonium Audio Crimson, the MES 3, and the OG Prestige. Now, I just want to make this perfectly clear that all these are resolution monsters, and and the difference is minimal. The Condensa 12 is only like slightly better, like 5%, maybe 10% at best. But both the Crimson and the original Prestige have a more VW shape because of the boosted sub bass and more energetic treble, you know, just overall more exciting. Whereas the Condensa 12 has a more balanced sound and just pulls in more detail because it has just a flatter, more balanced neutral signature and just more resolving in general. I don't know how they did it, maybe just, you know, more drivers, which is why the Condensa 12 is currently my favorite top of the line IEM aside from the original EJ07. Now I realize not everyone wants to drop over $1,000 for, you know, a pair of earphones, so an alternative to those would be the Kiwi Ears Quintet at around $220, or the RT T10, which is a planar that has great resolution and layering under $100. You can also go for the MP145, but you know, strictly in terms of resolution and technical performance, it's very similar to the RT because they're both planars, so I would just save my money and get the RT. Moving on, for the best treble performance, so the smoothest and most airy, my pick would be again the Condensa 12 and the Prestige LTD. Both are equally airy and very spacious, with the only difference really coming down to the vocals and resolution on the Condensa 12 being a little bit better, but you know, for $1,000 more. Now the Raven, Crimson, and OG Prestige all have more treble, you know, energy, sharper in the notes. They feel more lively, so they're not as smooth, but depending on your preferences, those can work as well if you just want, you know, more treble energy. Then at around $150, you can also pick up the Sennheiser IE200. You can probably get on these on sale for around $110 most of the time, which they have, you know, mediocre low end and vocals, but has one of the smoothest and airiest treble, even around $200. And if you want something brighter and sharper in the treble, then the SimGot EA500 is a great, you know, budget pick as well at around $80. As for the best vocal IEM, I already made a full video on this, so I won't get into it too much, but that would be again the Lecture Condensa 12. Very airy, detailed, but still rich and powerful, extended and open, just, you know, pretty much perfect vocals. Even though it's very airy and sparkly, it never gets sharp or fatiguing, and the gain region is perfect. There's no masking in the vocals as well, so pretty much just like a very perfect vocal IEM. However, it does cost over $2,000, so a more attainable alternative would be the SimGot EA1000 at $220, which is bright leading but highlights the female vocals very well, sparkly and just very natural sounding in the timbre, with amazing bass texture on top. And if you want something darker, so a set that scales a lot better but still powerful, extended and open, then you can grab the Lecture DZ4 as well. As for the best all-rounder IEM, so you know, very flexible, very versatile and safe but still fun, that would be the Audio Monarch Mark III. Now technically speaking, the Raven, the Crimson, and the Mestre are a little more resolving, but the treble energy can get a bit much on the Crimson, and the Raven might be too V-shaped, you know, to be an all-rounder. And as for the Mess, it's not as full in the low end, as well as having tamered upper mids, so more neutral than the Monarchs and not very all-rounded. Which is why if you want the most versatile IEM that can, you know, pretty much play any genre you throw at it, then the Monarch perfectly fits that criteria. And for around $500 less, the Zen's Top is the next best thing. Very similar in the sound to the Monarchs, very similar resolution and technically as well, but just not as refined and, you know, engaging, impactful in the bass, not as well controlled, and just a little bit boomier in the low end. And if you don't mind a little bit of planar timbre, then the Hydas MP145 is also a great all-rounder at around $200 or $160 on sale. Now the low end isn't as slamming and, you know, heavy as the Monarch and the Top, and it's also not as natural, and the technical performance isn't as good as well, but it's not overly sharp like most of the other planars. It's very familiar and just, you know, fun sounding planar IEM. But for those who don't want to spend that much or are still unsure about, you know, stepping entirely into the IEM rabbit hole, I don't blame you guys. Correct choice in my opinion. For those people, I would first recommend trying the SimGot EW200 at $40. If you're not trying to become an audiophile and, you know, simply just want a nice pair of earphones, then these are probably the best value IEM of 2023. They're my favorite budget IEM under $100, and just in terms of, you know, pure value, it doesn't get much better than this. I actually made a separate video on it here along with another IEM, but yeah, I hope you guys found this video helpful. I hope I did an okay job as summarizing all the IEM that I've heard at least. You know, I'm not gonna be able to hear everything, but you know, I hope this video was at least a little bit helpful. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see everyone in the next one.